This is not your ordinary Pappardelle with Ragu. I made this with tofu. It's got such rich, savory flavors, you're going to forget that you're eating healthy. I started off by making my own homemade Italian sausage. You could always use store-bought if you'd like, but this recipe is so easy to make. You can make a whole bunch at once, keep it in the freezer, and then you have it when you need it. And then you can have this homemade Pappardelle pasta made in less than 20 minutes. All you need is tofu and a whole bunch of seasonings. So let's start by putting all of our ingredients for the marinade into the bowl. We are going to use this vegan no beef bouillon that I've used a lot of times before, and it's one of my favorites. I also have a tablespoon of Bragg's liquid aminos, a tablespoon of vegan Worcestershire sauce. Now this is optional. If you can't find vegan Worcestershire sauce, you can use A1 steak sauce if you'd like. I also will add a teaspoon of liquid smoke. That gives it a lot of nice smoky flavor, as well as 4 tablespoons of nutritional yeast and onion powder and garlic powder. Now we're going to start adding in our Italian seasonings, which would be oregano, basil, fennel, rosemary, thyme. There's some paprika. I'm also going to add 2 tablespoons of coconut oil that's been melted, or you can use other neutral tasting oil. I'm going to add some water and some tomato paste. And again, I love these tubes of tomato paste, so I don't have to waste a whole can because this recipe only calls for a tablespoon and a half. I'm going to add some molasses. Molasses is very high in iron, so if you need iron in your diet, but meat is also high in iron and it has a flavor. So this molasses is going to help our tofu meat taste more like real meat. Last thing I want to add is some crushed red pepper. Now you can add as much or as little as this if you like. I like mine kind of mild. I know this seems like a whole lot of ingredients, but it's all seasonings. If you wanted to place all of those herbs with Italian seasoning mix, you can do that too. Let's go ahead and mix up our marinade ingredients, and then we can start to crumble our tofu. Today we are using super firm tofu for this. I really like the texture of the super firm for the meat replacements. We just need to drain out a little bit of the excess water. There's no need to press this super firm tofu. It's already as pressed as it's going to be, but there is some extra water in the package, so go ahead and drain that out, and then we can start to crumble it. You want to crumble it up into small pieces like you would see in Italian sausage crumbles. I started making my own Italian sausage crumbles when the brand I used to use stopped making it, so I had to come up with my own recipe, and I'm kind of glad they did because now I can make my own Italian sausage crumbles whenever I want them. I think it's cheaper and the ingredients are a lot better. If you can't find super firm tofu, you can use extra firm tofu for this, but you might want to press it and it might take a little bit longer to cook. So go ahead and crumble up all the large chunks and make sure it is a good texture for what you are looking for. Then we're going to go ahead and dump our tofu right into our marinade. Once we do that, we can just mix it together, and we want to make sure all of that flavor coats each piece of tofu. So make sure that each piece of tofu is covered with the marinade. The great thing about these crumbled tofu is there's lots of little crevices, and tofu generally only gets flavored on the outside, but with these crevices, there's flavor in every single little crevice. So this is a super flavorful tofu recipe that you're going to love. If you see any extra larger pieces while you're mixing it up, you can go ahead and break those up. Once you do that, you're going to want to spread this out on a pan. I like to line my pan with parchment paper because I do not like scrubbing pans. So go ahead and pour your tofu out onto the pan, and then you'll want to spread it out into an even, thin layer. You don't want any big clumps because that means it won't dry as well as you want it to, and it will take a lot longer. So make sure it's spread out nice and even. Now what we're doing with this is we are going to kind of dehydrate this and get it nice and dry. It's going to be slightly crispy, but not terribly crispy. I'll show you what texture we're looking for when we get it out of the oven. We're going to put this in the oven at 350, and we're going to bake it for about 20 to 30 minutes. Now you might have to go to 40 minutes. Just keep an eye on it. Every 10 minutes or so, you're going to want to take it out of the oven and stir it up to make sure that it cooks evenly. This is what your crumbles should look like when they come out of the oven. And at this point, you can let them cool and store them in the refrigerator or in the freezer, whichever you want, until you're ready to serve them. And when you serve them, we're going to rehydrate them. When you're ready to use it, you can rehydrate it in water or in broth, depending on what you're making. If you just want to put it on top of a pizza or put it into a sandwich, just putting it into some broth might be a good idea. But because I am making this into a ragu, I am going to rehydrate it in that ragu sauce so it soaks up all those great flavors. You're probably wondering why I go to all the trouble to dehydrate it and then rehydrate it. And this step is very important. It gives it all the right texture, so don't skip it. I do want to give a shout out to The Burger Dude and Sauce Stash because they have similar recipes on YouTube and I got some ideas from them. So I'll put a link in the description box below so you can look at their recipes too. And while you're there, why don't you go ahead and click that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss any of my recipes. To get the ragu started, we're going to saute some onions and also some bell peppers in a little bit of oil until they are soft. While those are softening up, I want to go ahead and get 5 cloves of garlic ready. To do that, I just like to smash the garlic with the back of my knife, and that breaks off the powder or the papery covering, and I will do that to about 5 cloves of garlic. And once I do that, I'll chop those up and to a fine mince. You could use a jarred garlic here if you wanted to, but I do think that the fresh garlic is better in a sauce like this. Let's add that garlic to our onions and peppers, and we're going to cook that a little bit until it softens up, and then we will add our tomato paste. I like to cook the tomato paste a little bit with the onions and peppers to make sure it gets the canny flavor off, and then I'm going to add my beef broth. I just add my water and then my beef broth paste separately. There's no need to mix it together ahead of time. I'm going to mix that all together, and then I'm going to add in some dried herbs. For dried herbs, I'm going to use some basil, and then I'm also going to use some parsley. You could add other herbs here if you wanted to, like oregano or thyme, but that's good for what I'm doing today. Once I get that all mixed together, I am going to go ahead and throw in some vegetables. I threw in some zucchini from my garden that I had frozen, and I forgot to record that part, so you'll see the zucchini in there, and that's where it came from. I'm also adding a can of diced or crushed tomatoes, and then we're going to put in the Italian sausage to rehydrate in the sauce. By rehydrating the Italian sausage in the sauce, it adds a lot more flavor to the Italian sausage, and it makes the recipe so much more rich. If you wanted to rehydrate the Italian sausage for something else, you could do it in some broth or in some water, depending on how salty the sauce is. Now that that's all cooked down, I want to throw in some spinach at the last minute to wilt down, and you'll notice I chopped that spinach up fine so it kind of disappears into the sauce. Let's let that cook down together until it's all done. You want to cook it until it's a nice thick sauce. While that was all going on, I was cooking up some pappardelle pasta in some boiling water for about 7 minutes, and then I drained it and then I rinsed it in some water to remove some of the excess starch. Doesn't that look good? I really love a nice thick noodle. It definitely gives a good flavor and texture to the dish. Now let's add our cooked pasta to the pan along with some fresh herbs if you have them available. That will make a delicious ending to the sauce. Once you stir that together, your dinner is ready. Look how rich and delicious that pasta looks. It looks fantastic. It's packed with protein and vegetables. I wanted to show you real quickly, this is what the Italian sausage would look like if we just rehydrated it on its own. Doesn't that look a lot like a ground meat or a ground sausage that's going to be perfect in any of your recipes? Who knew that plant-based meals could be so good? If you want some more easy plant-based dinner ideas that are inspired by the Blue Zones, then check out this playlist right here. So good.